When my last film, which launched here in 2012, called Secret Disco Revolution, was sort of coming to the end of its festival, etc. cycle, I was thinking, because successful as that one was, these things are a real uphill battle, and you want to choose what you plunge into carefully. And I was looking at the kind of films that were really breaking through at the time, like documentaries like A Man on Wire and Searching for Sugar Man, and just scratching my head and wondering, where do people find these stories? They're American stories with global resonance, that have a kind of Hollywood third act, a very charismatic lead character, and a treasure trove of found stock footage. I came to this story through my car mechanic. I drive a very impractical old car, which requires having a relationship with a mechanic. My mechanic is a very bright, kind of politically aware guy who said to me one day, "You do docs. I have this buddy who goes down to Cuba. He met a guy in a bar who hijacked an airplane, and he wants to tell his story." You hear wild things that people tell you should make films about all the time. We Googled this hijacker from the mechanic's shop and got the kind of threads of this amazing, intriguing story. The hijacking, a murder involving 8 people on a golf course owned by the Rockefellers, and some vague suggestion of political activism. And I couldn't see how all these things tied together, but I was certainly intrigued. A contact was made via my mechanic's friend, and, I was on a plane to Cuba before long to meet this guy. So it came to me quite randomly. I just heard the bare bones of this story, and I thought, there's a film here almost for sure. I mean, there's a hijacking and 8 murders, and you're getting, if you can get it, access to one of the most wanted American fugitives in Cuba, a man 30 years on the FBI's most wanted list. I think there should be a film here. But you have to then secure access. Access is the key thing once you've discovered the story. And that involved, my going to meet him and us basically sussing each other out. It was he had to meet and vet me and decide whether I was going to be the person he was going to tell this story to. And he's a shrewd guy who is aware of the saleability of this story. Not that I bought it. You don't do that in documentaries, but he was motivated, as it turned out. This is another question, but he was motivated by a desire to help his co-defendants who have not had the opportunity to hijack a plane, and as a result have been rotting away in American prisons for 43 years. So that was his motivation. We met, sussed each other out. Obviously, it was really a question of whether he was going to give me access. For me, I knew it would be incredible one way or another. Just the access alone would be, and knowing what the backstory was. I didn't know how I'd do it, but I knew there was a gold mine of material there. And it wasn't a question even of liking him or even necessarily trusting him. Although I did, both happen. But he didn't have to be Mother Teresa. And as we've learned, Mother Teresa may not have been Mother Teresa anyway. We just had to kind of have, Anyway, so when I met him, I saw that he was an absolute star anyway. In documentary terms, he is a great, great documentary character. He's funny, he's sexy, he's scary, he's a very bright guy. And he's a rich and complex character that you'd want to spend a couple of hours talking to. This is much more cloak and dagger than any story I've worked on before. And indeed, my last film was about disco, which presented certain challenges, what to wear with the interview with whom and so on. And which rhinestone to kiss first. But there are many challenges in the gathering of this material, including kind of shooting under the radar in Cuba, because Well, for one thing, and even though I don't think there's anything that makes Cuba look bad in this film, in my opinion, I don't know what their opinion is going to be. So that was one challenge, and on the other hand, indeed, you're dealing with an American fugitive. You're dealing with a crime. Well, I would call it even a series of crimes that led up to the hijacking, and some of those crimes involve the FBI and, American police officers. And so it was quite a minefield of logistics, to figure out how to approach who, when, what, with the full awareness that of course this is someone the FBI want. I don't know how high a priority he is still for them or not, and indeed will this bring me under supervision and scrutiny? This is not a novel concept in the Snowden era, right? So but the other challenge was, aside from the FBI approaching me, was how was I going to approach the FBI? And that was the dual concern and challenge. So I have managed to. There is a former FBI agent in the film speaking to these issues, and he so far is the only member of the FBI that I have. Actually, that's not true. I've dealt with the FBI as well, getting some of the background files and getting their files on the crime and so on. And so far, the exchanges have either been, journalistic in nature or kind of basically, what's the word? I'm just applying to get files, and they came eventually. So nothing scarier than that so far. But hey, the night is young. There were a number of events that just happened, world events in the business, a whole bunch of things that have conspired to make this an opportune kind of time for the film. And I can't pretend that much of this was planned. And some of this is not good for him either. I mean, some of the stuff that's, let's say, good for the film is not necessarily good news for him. Of course, the largest of these was, I was already knee-deep in this story, had already done my key interview with him. We're certainly well into financing it as well, when Obama's announcement about Cuba came. And who could have predicted that the 60-year American embargo against Cuba would begin to crumble as we were working on this, thereby turning this from a kind of fascinating historical story to front-page current news, which, in the best sense for documentary marketing, is not going to get old anytime fast, because while it feels and is very dramatic, what's going to happen between the two countries and how is that going to impact him, it's not likely going to happen tomorrow. I didn't know exactly, so I knew it was kind of great for the story, and in fact went back and filmed further with him to get his reaction to this and see how it was affecting him already. And that became, the framework. Often you figure out, often in documentaries, unlike, well, I know this happens in scripted films too, but the best laid plans, go awry and at every stage. And you have a concept for how you're going to structure it, but then you try that and it doesn't work, and you go back to the drawing board repeatedly for the next 6 months. So, excuse me. So I didn't know exactly where that would fall in the structure of this documentary. Actually, at a certain point, because things shift around all the time, I had that as the opening of the film for a while. Anyway, whatever. That's a question of structure. Yes, it ends on this cliffhanger, which is how it kind of experienced, which reflects the sequence in which the story occurred, came to me. And yes, it is a cliffhanger, and if something dramatic were to happen to him with one way or another with extradition, which is only one of the possibilities that is opened up by Americans being able to travel to Cuba. But yes, the global situation is such that there could very well be a follow-up of one kind or another.